My mother-in-law announced at our housewarming party that the house was finally safe because my name was nowhere on the deed. She said it with a champagne glass in her hand, standing in the living room I had spent 6 years saving for, while 30 relatives smiled like she had made a clever joke. Then she looked straight at me and said, "Nora helped make this place comfortable, of course. But helping does not mean owning." Mark understood that better than some people. I was holding a stack of dessert plates when my husband, Mark, leaned close enough that only I could hear him and said, "Do not embarrass my mum in her own house. Your money helped us get here. That does not mean your name belongs on everything." That was the first time anyone said the quiet part out loud. Until that moment, I thought the house was ours. I thought the deposit came from our joint savings because we were buying a home together. I thought all the paperwork Mark kept calling boring admin was just the normal mess of buying property. I was wrong about every part of it. Before I tell you what happens next, remember to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe if you enjoy authentic stories of family betrayal like this. My name is Nora. I am 34, American, and I have lived in Europe for almost 10 years. I met Mark when I was 27, at a friend's birthday dinner. He was quiet, polite, and steady in a way that made me feel safe. His mother, Margaret, was different from the beginning. She was not openly cruel at first. She was cold in a way that made you sound unreasonable if you tried to explain it. Whenever I told Mark something felt off, he said, "She is just old-fashioned." Or, "She does not mean it like that." Or, the one I heard most often, "Do not take everything personally." I wanted to be fair. I told myself Margaret was protective because Mark was her only son. Looking back, I was not fitting in. I was being trained to accept smaller and smaller spaces. Mark and I started saving for a house 2 years after we got married. Rent had gone up so much that every month felt like throwing money into a fire. We opened a joint savings account and named it House Fund in the banking app. Every payday, we both transferred money. I made slightly more, so my contributions were usually higher. I also had savings from before the marriage, money I earned by freelancing on weekends. And Mark knew we might use part of it when the right place came along. The agreement was simple. Both names, shared home, shared responsibility. That was what I believed. The first time I felt replaced was during the house viewings. Margaret started coming with us. At first she said she was only offering experience. Then she began answering questions before I could. Every viewing became Mark and Margaret walking ahead while I followed behind, smiling at strangers like a guest. Then we found the house. It was a 3-bedroom brick house with a narrow garden and afternoon sunlight. I loved it. Mark squeezed my hand in the hallway and said, "This feels like ours." I remember that word because later I had to ask myself whether he ever meant it. Margaret inspected the house with her arms folded and barely looked at me. After we left, she told Mark, "This one makes sense." From that day, I started getting pushed out of the process so gradually that I did not notice the door closing. Mark said he would handle the paperwork because my job was busy. I was managing a product launch and working late most nights. He said the estate agent preferred one point of contact. The solicitor was slow, and the mortgage conversations were dull. I asked more than once, "Do you need anything from me?" He always said, "Just trust me. We are finally doing this. Trust me." I heard that so many times it became a kind of lock. There were clues. I can admit that now. A letter came to our flat addressed to Mark and Margaret Byrne. I stood in the kitchen holding the envelope, feeling a strange little drop in my stomach. "Why is your mum on this?" I asked. Mark looked up from his laptop and sighed like I had interrupted him over nothing. "She asked the agent about the roof survey. It is probably related to that. Should I be copied on things too?" "Nora, please. You are exhausted. Do not invent problems because you are stressed." I let it go because I was tired and did not want to be the kind of wife who made every envelope into a fight. A few weeks before closing, Mark asked me to transfer 12,000 euros from my personal savings into the joint house account. He said the deposit needed to be stronger or we might lose the house. He showed me a spreadsheet with our savings and estimated fees. It looked normal, so I moved the money. Mark hugged me afterward and kissed my forehead. "You will not regret this," he said. "This is for us." The next week, Margaret came over with champagne. She had never brought champagne to our apartment before. She looked around our place as if she were already packing us out of it. "This is a major step for Mark," she said. "For both of us," I said. Her smile paused for half a second. "Of course. But a man needs a proper home. It changes how people see him." That was the first time I felt my money being turned into his achievement. When we finally got the keys, Mark handed them to me first. I know that sounds sweet. It felt sweet then. He took a photo of me at the front door, and I posted it with the caption, "We did it." Margaret commented, "So proud of my son." I stared at that comment longer than I should have. "Not proud of you both. Not congratulations. My son." I told myself not to be petty. I told myself social media comments did not matter. Except it was not my home in the way I thought. Margaret announced the housewarming before the boxes were unpacked. I wanted to wait. Mark said it would make his mum happy. When I pushed back, he said, "Do not be difficult." Difficult was the word they used whenever I had a boundary. The invitation Margaret sent was my next real warning. It was a digital card with a photo of the house and a fake gold border. Across the top, in big letters, it said, "Margaret Byrne welcomes you to celebrate Mark's new home." Not our new home. Not Mark and Nora's home. Margaret welcomes you. Mark's new home. I sent Mark a screenshot and said it made me look erased. He replied, "She made it quickly. Please do not make me police her wording." He made me sound controlling for noticing. The next day, Mark's sister Claire called. She was the only person in his family who had made real effort with me. She sounded careful. "Is everything okay between you and Mark?" she asked. "Why?" She paused. "Mum said you are getting tense about the house. Like you think people are trying to take something from you." My whole body went cold. "She said that?" "She said you were upset about the invitation and that you have been strange about ownership." I thought I should check. I told Claire I had only asked why the invitation made it sound like the house belonged to Mark alone when we had bought it together. Claire went quiet. "Together?" she said. Something in her voice changed so quickly that I sat down. "Yes," I said. "Why did you ask it like that?" There was a long silence. I heard water running in her kitchen, then stopping. "No reason," she said finally. "I probably misunderstood, Mum." That night, after Mark fell asleep, I opened our banking app. I was not trying to catch him. I was trying to calm myself down. I wanted to see the transfers and remind myself that I was not crazy. The joint account showed the big payment to the solicitor's client account, 78,400 euros. The reference said, "Byrne purchase completion." Byrne was Mark's last name. Margaret's too. Mine, legally, since I had taken it after marriage. But the reference did not say Mark and Nora. It did not say our address. Just Byrne. I scrolled through the account. Survey, inspection, insurance quote, closing costs, all paid from the joint account. Then my 12,000 euros from personal savings sitting there like a bruise. I did not wake Mark. I wanted to. But when the floor starts cracking under your life, sometimes the first thing you do is stand very still and listen for how deep it goes. The next morning, while Mark was in the shower, I opened the shared laptop. We used it for bills, travel bookings, and house documents. I found a folder called Purchase Docs. Most of it was boring. Appliance manuals, inspection notes, PDFs with names that meant nothing. Then I found an email chain he had saved by mistake. The first email was from the agent. It said, "As discussed, the purchaser on record will be Margaret Byrne. Please confirm whether Nora should be copied into correspondence going forward." Mark replied, "No need to copy Nora. I will handle anything she needs to know." I read that sentence so many times the words stopped looking real. Anything she needs to know. There was another email 2 days later. The agent asked whether the deposit funds were coming from Margaret's account or Mark's. Margaret replied, Funds will move through Mark and Nora's joint account for convenience, but the property should remain in my name as agreed. Nora does not need to be involved in the ownership paperwork. As agreed, that was the moment I stopped hoping it was a mistake. I took photos of the emails with my phone because my hands were shaking too badly to trust myself with screenshots. Then I sat at the kitchen table and waited for Mark to come downstairs. When he walked in, I asked one question. Whose name is on the house? He stopped by the counter. He did not look confused. He did not say, "What do you mean?" He looked annoyed. "Why are you asking that?" That told me more than an answer would have. "Whose name is on it, Mark?" He put his mug down very carefully. "Mum's name is on it for now." For now. Two words people use when they need you to stop asking for a date. Why? Because it made the purchase cleaner. Cleaner for who? For everyone. I said, "Our joint savings paid for that house. My personal savings went into that deposit." He lowered his voice. "Your money helped us qualify for the purchase." That is different. I actually laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because my brain could not accept that my husband was standing in our kitchen trying to grammar his way out of stealing from me. "You told me it was our house. It is our home, but not our house." He looked away. I asked if he planned to add my name later. He said we would see how things settled. I asked if Margaret was paying back the money from the joint account. He said I was turning a family arrangement into a personal attack. Then I asked why he told the agent not to copy me. That was when his face changed. "Because this is exactly what you do," he snapped. "You turn everything into a fight." Mum was right to be cautious. There it was. The lie had become my personality flaw. I did not show him every email. I only said I had seen enough. He accused me of snooping. I told him if I had to snoop to find out where my savings went. Maybe the problem was not the snooping. He slept in the guest room that night. Around midnight, I heard him on the phone. His voice was low, but I heard my name. I heard bank account. I heard she is acting like I stole from her. The next morning, Margaret called before I had even made coffee. "Nora," she said, in that flat voice she used when she wanted me to feel like a child. "Mark told me you went digging through private family business." "Private family business paid for with my money?" She made a small sound, almost a laugh. "This is why I said things had to be handled properly. You are very emotional about ownership. I am emotional because I was lied to." "You were housed," she said. "You were included. You were given stability." A grateful woman would understand the difference between being cared for and trying to claim control. Given stability. Like I had arrived with a suitcase and they had generously let me sleep indoors. Something in me went still. Not calm exactly. More like cold enough to stop shaking. I said, "I want a written explanation of how much money you contributed and why I was not told you would be the owner." She said, "I will not be bullied by my son's wife." Then she hung up. By noon, the family group chat started doing what families do when they want pressure to look like concern. Mark's aunt wrote, "I hope everyone can remember that homes should bring families together, not tear them apart." His cousin wrote, "Some people only care about property when they think they can benefit from it." Margaret wrote, "I am heartbroken that after protecting my son's future, I am being treated like a criminal." Mark wrote nothing. That silence hurt worse than the comments. He let them build the version where I was greedy, foreign, unstable, and trying to take his mother's house. He did not have to accuse me directly. He just had to stand there while everyone else did it for him. I typed 3 different replies and deleted all of them. If I sounded angry, they would use my tone as proof. So I documented. I downloaded the bank statements showing the transfers from our joint account. I saved the email chain, showing Margaret was the purchaser, and Mark had told the agent not to copy me. Then, because the shared laptop was still logged into Mark's messaging app, I saw a thread between him and Margaret that made everything inside me go quiet. I know people will argue about whether I should have looked. I am not saying I handled every second perfectly. I was scared, and I had just learned my husband had moved years of shared money into a property I had no name on. The messages were from 3 weeks before completion. Margaret wrote, "Once it is in my name, she cannot start making claims if the marriage goes bad." Mark replied, "She will not ask as long as we keep it simple." I will tell her it is paperwork, Margaret wrote. Use the joint account so it looks like ordinary household money. Do not let her separate her contribution later. Then Mark wrote, I already moved her savings through the joint account. She trusts me. She trusts me. I sat in the kitchen with the refrigerator humming behind me and realized this had not been confusion. It had not been caution. It had not even been Mark being weak around his mother. It had been a plan. The worst part was not the money, although the money mattered. It was every time he had kissed my forehead and said, trust me, while he and his mother were counting on that trust like it was another asset to use. The housewarming party was 2 days away. The idea of smiling in that house made me feel sick. But if I stayed away, Margaret would tell everyone I was sulking because I could not control family property. Mark would say I was unstable, and his relatives would nod because they had already been given the script. So I went. I printed 3 things and put them in a plain folder. The joint bank statement, the estate agent email, and the message thread. I only needed enough to break the story they had built. Before the party, Mark found me in the bedroom while I was getting dressed. Can you just be normal today? He asked. I looked at him through the mirror. Normal? Do not embarrass Mum. She invited people. She invited people to celebrate a house bought with our money and put in her name. His jaw tightened. This is my family home. That was new. Your family home? You know what I mean. No, Mark. I really do not anymore. He stepped closer. If you make a scene today, no one will forgive you. Not Mum. Not my relatives. Maybe not even me. A month earlier, that would have terrified me. That day, it clarified something. If the truth makes a scene, I said, then the scene was already there. Guests arrived around 4. Margaret had overdone everything. Flowers in the entryway, catered trays in the kitchen, a framed photo of Mark holding the keys on the side table. Not us. Mark. I felt like a guest in a museum built from my erasure. People congratulated Mark. A few congratulated me too, but carefully, like they had heard something and did not know which version was safe. Mark's aunt hugged me and said, I hope you can enjoy today. Claire found me near the garden door. She looked nervous. Mum has been saying things, she whispered. I know. She said you threatened to take the house from her. I almost laughed. Did she say why I would think I had any connection to it? Claire's face changed. No. She just said you did not understand family property. I said, Shin, ask Mark how much of my money went into it. Before Claire could answer, Margaret clinked a spoon against her glass. Everyone gathered in the living room. Mark stood beside his mother, smiling that tight smile he wore when he wanted public approval more than honesty. I stood near the doorway with the folder under my arm, my heart beating so hard I felt it in my wrists. Margaret began with a speech about family. She said her late husband would have been proud. She said buying property required wisdom, not emotion. She said a mother always knew when to protect her child from future uncertainty. Then she looked directly at me. And I know modern marriages can make people confused about what they are entitled to, she said. But this home is secure because I made sure it was handled correctly. Mark will always have a roof over his head, and no one can use marriage as a way to take what his family built. A few people murmured approval. Then she smiled at me. Nora helped make it comfortable. I will give her that. But comfort is not ownership. I felt every eye turn, even the ones pretending not to. Mark took his mother's hand. That was what made me move. The hand-holding made them look like the injured party together. I stepped forward and said, Can I ask one question before everyone toasts? Mark's face changed immediately. Nora. I kept my voice calm. That mattered, because I knew they were waiting for anger. I looked at Margaret. When you say you protected this home and your family built it, do you mean you paid for it? The room went unevenly quiet. Some people looked at the floor. Others looked at Margaret. She lifted her chin. This is not the time. You chose the time, I said. You brought it up in front of everyone. I am just asking whether the money came from you. Mark stepped toward me. Stop. I opened the folder. His aunt muttered, Oh, for God's sake. I held up the first page, the joint bank statement. I did not wave it around. I turned it so the people closest could see the highlighted transfer. This is the joint account Mark and I funded for 6 years. This transfer, €78,400, went to the solicitor for this purchase. That account was funded by our paychecks. 12,000 of it came from my personal savings 1 month before completion. Margaret's mouth tightened. That proves nothing except that my son allowed you access to family money. Allowed me access. I heard Claire inhale sharply. I pulled out the second page. This is the email from the estate agent confirming Margaret would be the purchaser on record. The agent asked if I should be copied into correspondence. Mark replied, "No need to copy Nora. I will handle anything she needs to know." Claire said, "Mark, is that real?" Mark looked at me, not at his sister. "You went through my private emails?" There it was again. Not denial. Not confusion. His first defense was that I found out. I said, "The emails were in our purchase folder on our shared laptop." Margaret said, "You are humiliating yourself." "No," I said. "You tried to humiliate me first. You called me entitled in a room full of people while standing in a house my money helped buy. I am correcting the record." Mark's cousin looked down at his drink. Margaret tried to recover. "This is a private family arrangement. Nora has always been insecure about belonging here. And now she is twisting normal protection into some ugly accusation." That sentence nearly got me because it was close enough to my real fear to hurt. But I still had the third page. I pulled out the message thread and read only 4 lines. Margaret wrote, "Once it is in my name, she cannot start making claims if the marriage goes bad." Mark replied, "She will not ask as long as we keep it simple. I will tell her it is paperwork." Margaret wrote, "Use the joint account, so it looks like ordinary household money." Then Mark wrote, "I already moved her savings through the joint account. She trusts me." Nobody spoke. The silence after that was heavy and ugly and real. Mark's face went red, then pale. "You had no right to print that," he said. Claire turned on him. "That is what you are upset about?" Margaret snapped. "Claire, stay out of this." Claire did not. She looked at her mother and asked, "Did you pay anything toward the house?" Margaret stared at her like betrayal had just entered the room wearing her daughter's face. "I protected my son," she said. "That was not the question," Claire said. Mark's aunt, quieter now, asked, "Margaret, did Nora's money go into the purchase?" Margaret did not answer. That was when the room shifted. Not dramatically. No one clapped. No one cheered. It was worse than that. People began seeing the shape of what had happened, and once they saw it, they could not unsee it. A neighbor who had come with flowers slowly set her glass down on the side table. Mark's cousin stopped looking smug. His aunt looked at me and then away, ashamed or embarrassed or both. Mark reached for my elbow. I stepped back before he could touch me. "We should talk upstairs," he said. "No," I said. "You had months to talk privately. You chose public lies. I am done protecting them." Margaret's voice turned sharp. "If you walk out of this house today, do not expect to come back." The old me would have heard that as a threat about my marriage. The new me heard it as an accidental confession. This house had never been meant to be mine. I said, "That is the first honest thing anyone has said today." Then I went upstairs, packed 1 suitcase, took my passport, my work laptop, the folder, and the small jewelry box my grandmother had given me. Claire followed me and asked if I had somewhere to go. I said yes, although it was only half true. A friend from work, Anna, had once told me her spare room was open if I ever needed breathing space. I had never imagined I would need it because my husband and his mother had built a house around my money and locked my name outside. In the driveway, Mark came after me. "Nora, wait. You are blowing up our marriage over paperwork." I turned around. "No. You blew it up when you used my trust as part of the deposit." He lowered his voice. "Do you know how bad you made me look in there?" That was when I understood what he was most afraid of. Not losing me. Not hurting me. Not what he had done. How he looked. I said, "Good. Now you know what it feels like when someone tells a room who you are before you get to speak." Claire drove me to Anna's flat. I cried harder than I expected. I cried like someone had removed the floor from under me, and then accused me of being dramatic for falling. The next morning, my phone was a disaster. Margaret wrote a long message in the family group chat saying she had been publicly attacked in her own home by a woman who never respected family boundaries. She said I had violated privacy, twisted money details, and used American aggression to shame a mother who only wanted to protect her son. American aggression. That was new. Mark sent 12 messages. The first ones were angry. Then came the soft ones. Can we talk like adults? You know, Mum did not mean it that way. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I still love you. We can fix the paperwork later. Later. Everything honest with Mark was always later. My name later. The truth later. My safety later. My dignity later. I did not answer. I opened a new account and changed where my paycheck went. I did not drain anything that was not mine. I simply stopped giving him access to new money. Then I made an appointment with a solicitor. I am not going to turn this into a legal lecture because that is not the point. The plain version is this. Even if my name was not on the title, the fact that marital money and my personal savings were used mattered. It did not magically fix everything, but it meant Mark and Margaret could not wave me away as a greedy guest. My solicitor sent a letter asking for a written accounting of the deposit, the closing costs, and my personal contribution. It also asked that Margaret and Mark stop describing the money as a gift unless they had proof I agreed to gift it. That one sentence changed the tone of everything. Suddenly, Mark wanted to talk in writing. Suddenly, he wanted to say there had been a misunderstanding. Suddenly, he admitted my 12,000 euros had gone into the purchase, but said he had always intended to make it right. Margaret did not apologize. According to Claire, she told relatives the letter was proof I had planned to come after the house all along. But the story did not land the same way anymore because too many people had heard the messages. Too many people had watched her refuse to answer whether she paid anything. Update. 3 days after the party, Margaret deleted every housewarming photo from social media. The framed picture of Mark holding the keys disappeared too. Claire told me one of their cousins had commented, "Whose money paid for it?" under the post before it vanished. I should not have enjoyed that as much as I did. But after weeks of being painted as greedy and unstable, watching the perfect little story crack in public felt like breathing through an open window. Mark's aunt sent me a private message. It was short. I judged you before hearing the facts. I am sorry. That was it. No big speech. No dramatic side switching. But I saved it because one honest sentence meant more than a dozen fake family speeches. The family group chat went quiet for 4 days. When Margaret finally posted again, it was a vague quote about betrayal and loyalty. No one responded except one cousin with a thumbs up, and even that disappeared later. Then the first real consequence happened. Mark called and said Margaret was furious because the solicitor's letter had made it harder for her to discuss refinancing the house for repairs. The simple version is that once someone asks formal questions about where purchase money came from, people stop treating the story like a clean family gift. They start asking for explanations. Mark asked me to clear it up by signing a statement saying the money had been voluntarily contributed with no expectation. I almost could not believe he said it. "You want me to sign a statement saying the lie was true?" I asked. He said, "I want you to stop making this worse." I said, "Then pay back the money you admit was mine. Put everything else in writing. And stop using your mother to talk to me." He called me cold. Maybe I was. But I was done being warm enough to be used. A week later, through emails between solicitors, Mark offered to repay my 12,000 euros in installments. It was not everything, but it was the first time he admitted in writing that money he had called ours had been mine before he moved it. My solicitor pushed for a full accounting of the joint account too. That part is still ongoing. I am not going to pretend it is finished when it is not. Real life does not resolve in one dramatic afternoon. Some consequences arrive as paperwork, appointments, quiet emails, and the strange relief of no longer having to convince someone they hurt you. Margaret tried one more time to reach me directly. She sent an email with no apology, only a long paragraph about how family assets must be protected because marriages can fail. I replied with one sentence. Please direct all questions about the funds to my solicitor. That felt better than any speech I could have given. Final update. I went back once with Anna and Claire to collect more of my things. Margaret was sitting at the kitchen island, stiff and silent, like she owned not just the house but the air inside it. Mark tried to pull me into the hallway to talk. I said anything important could be emailed. As I carried out my winter coats, I noticed the invitation from the housewarming still stuck to the fridge. Someone had crossed out Mark's new home with a black marker. I do not know who did it. Margaret had not removed it, but she had stopped displaying it proudly. It was a small thing. Maybe petty. Maybe meaningless to anyone else. To me, it mattered because the lie had been visible. And now the correction was visible too. I took the plant I bought the first week we moved in. I had put it in the front window because I thought every real home needed something living in it. For now, that plant is on Anna's windowsill. It is not where I imagined it would be. But it is mine. My paycheck goes into my account now. My questions go through people who cannot tell me I am too emotional for asking them. Mark is staying at a friend's place because, according to Claire, he and Margaret cannot stop fighting about whose idea it really was. That part is almost funny in a sad way. Being co-conspirators was easier before the conspiracy had witnesses. I do not know what my marriage will look like. But I cannot go back to a version where my money is shared. My name is erased. And my silence is treated like family loyalty. I was not greedy. I was not unstable. I was not trying to steal a house from my husband's mother. I was trying to find out why my own husband used my money to build a home I was never meant to own. And for the first time in a long time, nobody gets to answer that question for me. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.